Now let's put Illinois in focus, with an Illinois Supreme Court case heard this morning in Springfield surrounding whether someone merely charged with a felony, not convicted of a felony, can have their firearm owner's ID card suspended or revoked. In a case heard by the Supreme Court in Illinois this morning, filing from the plaintiffs say even law-abiding citizens make mistakes, and at times the criminal justice system makes its own. The filing says, here, plaintiff's only mistake was traveling to visit his family in Cook County. The mistake the criminal justice system made was arresting and initiating a felony prosecution against the innocent person. While traveling, the plaintiff in this case had an unloaded firearm properly enclosed in a case and secured in the trunk of the vehicle in which he was a passenger. And the plaintiff's filing says, consistent with Illinois law, plaintiff also possessed a valid firearm owner's ID card, which he carried with him. This rendered his possession of his firearm fully compliant with statutory requirements. The vehicle was stopped, according to court documents, for a minor traffic violation, a cracked windshield, which is a violation committed by the driver of the car, not a passenger like the plaintiff in this case. The filing continues saying, following what appears to be standard police procedure, the officer who stopped the driver asked the plaintiff whether firearms were present inside the vehicle. The plaintiff truthfully answered, advising that there was an unloaded cased pistol in the trunk, and he produced his FOID card. Despite plaintiff's compliance with the various FOID statutes, plaintiff was immediately arrested and charged with carrying a loaded firearm without a valid FOID card. This felony accusation was facially untrue, the plaintiffs say in their filing, as the arresting officer knew the pistol was unloaded, secured in a case in the trunk, and the plaintiff possessed and presented a valid FOID card. Nevertheless, plaintiff's FOID card was subsequently invalidated, and from that instance, the plaintiff was prohibited from possessing a firearm anywhere in the state of Illinois. The filing from the plaintiff says federal law, however, did not require him to relinquish possession of firearms, but Illinois rendered his possession illegal. So that was a filing from the plaintiffs in this case, and in front of the Illinois Supreme Court Tuesday, arguing on behalf of the state, Carson Griffiths defended the FOID card law and said that the case should be remanded back.
This court should vacate or reverse the circuit court's judgment on either of two independent grounds. First, Bright's challenge to the temporary suspension of his FOID card is moot because his FOID card was reinstated in May 2023, and he did not make a clear showing that any mootness exception applies. Federal courts of appeals have issued several decisions that have uniformly upheld a similar federal law that prohibits the acquisition of firearms while an individual is under felony indictment. So those cases provide clear guidance to lower courts in Illinois, specifically as to the historical tradition allowing for the complete but temporary disarmament of individuals facing felony charges. Surety laws that allowed for restriction of firearm access to those reasonably accused of intending to breach the peace, and those could be entered on a finding of probable suspicion that an offense was intended, similar to the probable cause determination that accompanies felony charges.
Now, attorney Thomas Magg, representing the plaintiffs in the case challenging the FOID card law, he laid out what he says this case is really all about.
My client is a nonviolent person. He is a genuinely innocent man who was genuinely falsely arrested and genuinely violated of his constitutional rights. What we're challenging is the fact that they are deprived of the use of arms simply because ipso facto they are charged with a felony, any felony, no matter what the felony is, no matter what the evidence is. It's a total ban based on mere accusation. And there is no, other than the fact that, yes, you could lock somebody up, and the king did lock people up. That was one of the crimes of the listed in the Bill of Rights, potentially indefinitely. That's why we have a speedy trial clause of our Constitution.
Mag, he got questions from various Supreme Court justices this morning in Springfield, where Chief Justice P. Scott Neville asked about whether the case is moot because the plaintiff eventually got his FOID card back, and how this case fits into the public interest.
Technically, it is moot, but there are exceptions to the mootness doctrine that apply that allow this case to proceed.
Does it come within the public interest exception?
All right. Why does this come with
how?
How? One, it's a matter of public interest. Constitutional rights are a matter of public interest. This is a state statute that is being enforced by the Illinois State Police that regulates a fundamental constitutional right. This is a matter that reoccurs routinely. This is actually the second time this issue has been in front of this court in the last couple of years.
Now, MAG also fielded questions from Justice Sanjay Taylor about what specifically is being challenged in this case.
So your argument really is that the statute is facially unconstitutional because it does not provide for individualized assessment of the defendant's dangerousness.
As applied through 922N, I agree with that, but there are other statutes that can be applied through Section 8N that do allow for individualized assessment, such as the mental health determination. But again, there is no historical analog to simply saying, I accuse you of a crime, therefore you cannot keep and bear arms.
So the Illinois Supreme Court justices taking that case under advisement, meaning they could issue a ruling in the weeks or months ahead. Now, the Firearm Owner ID card has been challenged in Illinois state courts for years and has been considered by the Illinois Supreme Court several times in the recent past, with outcomes leading to cases being sent back to lower courts and no true decision on the constitutionality of requiring residents to get the state's permission through a government-issued ID to exercise the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, which the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. Yesterday was the primary all across the state for a variety of different races. Big on people's minds was who is going to be the Republican nominee to take on Governor J.B. Pritzker, who ran in the Democratic primary unopposed. Pritzker held a campaign-style event last night in Chicago and featured a whole host of different elected officials who are Democrats standing on stage in unity, and Pritzker used it as a way to kick off the election into November. But he took the time to criticize President Donald Trump and Republicans.
Right now, grifters of corruption and selfishness, purveyors of bigotry and hatred, have taken control of the White House and the Congress. Their purpose is to make themselves and their dear leader richer, and to do it at the expense of the powerless and the most vulnerable. The carnival barker-in-chief. Oh, sorry, I meant the commander-in-thief. Says there's no federal money for health care and food assistance for families in need. But he had no trouble finding tens of millions of dollars to send masked troops with assault weapons onto the streets of Illinois to terrorize Americans.
So again, the governor ran unopposed in the Democratic primary. He's looking to get a third term for Illinois governor. He does have a new running mate, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, seeking the U.S. Senate seat vacated by Dick Durbin, not running with Pritzker for a third term as governor. Instead, he tapped Christian Mitchell to be his lieutenant governor candidate. You saw him standing there on the stage behind him. Now, we had 4 different candidates running for the Republican nomination to take on Pritzker, one of them being Darren Bailey, state senator who ran against Pritzker 4 years ago and lost, and also 2 years ago ran in a primary against Mike Bost, a congressman from Southern Illinois, and also lost there. But Bailey getting the majority vote last night from Illinois Republicans who voted in the primary, and he suggested that Governor J.B. Pritzker is looking to run for president, something that Darren Bailey says he is not doing.
I'm not running to be president. I'm running to be your governor. Present, focused, accountable. Together, we can make Illinois affordable again. Together, we can make our communities safe. Together, we can give our kids a future right here at home.
So the rematch between Bailey and Pritzker is on, and we can expect to hear a lot more of what we're highlighting here in the months ahead. Governor J.B. Pritzker, he said that Bailey was likely to be the nominee before all the dust started to settle Tuesday evening, and he said that Bailey wants to be President Donald Trump.
Tonight, it appears the Republicans have again nominated Darren Bailey as their candidate for governor. Remember him? Bailey wants to be the Donald Trump of Illinois. He wants to lower the minimum wage. Lower the minimum wage. He wants to take away a woman's right to choose. He wants to continue the Trump tariff taxes on groceries. And his family still runs a school that uses a curriculum teaching that slavery wasn't wrong, and that women in the workforce have been harmful to America. That's who the Republican Party wants you to elect governor. But that's not who we are in Illinois, is it?
Now, Bailey responding to some of the criticism he's heard over the past 4 years since he lost to Pritzker, saying that it's the governor and Democrats that are causing pain on Illinois taxpayers.
To my friends in Chicago, I know I've got a Southern accent. Some folks have said that I talk funny. But from Carbondale to Wilmette, Quincy to Danville, one thing remains the same. Those bills in your mailbox, they don't care about anyone's accent. That's because this problem isn't regional. It's leadership. Illinois doesn't have a revenue problem. It has a leadership problem. And nowhere is that clear than when we take a look at our property taxes. Illinois families don't truly own their homes anymore. They rent them from the government.
So clearly, the lines are being drawn here with the two major party candidates soon to be set after the State Board of Elections certifies the election outcome. But the race is going to be a rematch, and we're going to hear a lot of different promises, some of those laid out last night from both candidates. Here's Governor J.B. Pritzker saying what he plans to do for Illinois taxpayers.
We will bring down electric bills by making Illinois the standard bearer for nuclear and renewable energy production. We will lower the cost of health care by cutting prescription drug costs like we have, and continuing to eliminate bills for unexpected health emergencies. We will make Illinois the heart of American innovation in quantum technology. We will accelerate economic growth and job creation by continuing to attract new businesses to our state. We will raise wages while building the skilled workforce of the future.
Now, Bailey also laid out what he says Illinoisans need from whoever's the next governor.
Our service workers, the men and women who show up early, stay late, and live on tips. Let me be clear, no tax on tips. To our hardworking Illinoisans putting in extra hours to provide for your family, no tax on overtime. And to our union members and our civil servants, I want to say this directly. I am not Bruce Rauner. I'm not coming for your pension. I want to work together to make Illinois government work again at all levels. You earned it. You were promised it. And as governor, I will uphold that promise.
So we've got several months before the November election, and that's just one race that's going to be top of mind for people in the weeks and months ahead. But we also have the outcome of the primary for U.S. Senate to fill that seat being vacated by Dick Durbin, who's been in Congress since 1983. He announced last year he wasn't running, and it opened up a crowded field on both Republican and Democrat sides. But as the dust settles, looks like for the Republicans, Don Tracy is going to be the nominee, and Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton will be the Democratic nominee. But the field's also seeming to settle for various other congressional races across the state. In the 1st Congressional District, Republican candidate Christian Maxwell won the GOP nomination. She'll face off against Democrat incumbent Jonathan Jackson in that Chicago area congressional district. In a crowded and tightly contested Democratic primary, LaShawn Ford, state representative, edged out Chicago official Melissa Conyers-Ervin to secure the Democratic nomination for the Congressional District 7. Republican Chad Copey will face off against Ford in November. Meanwhile, a closely watched race was neck and neck for most of the night last night with Illinois' 9th Congressional District. Evanston Mayor Daniel Biss ended up managing to beat content creator Kat Abba-Gazela for the Democratic nomination in that district. Biss will face off against Republican John Ellison. And the Democratic primary for Illinois Comptroller remained too close to call for that statewide seat. State Representative Margaret Croak held a 25,000 vote lead over State Senator Karina Villa, with 99.2% of the vote reported early Wednesday morning. Croak raised $1.8 million for her campaign, according to campaign filings, with strong individual backing from a variety of people, including Governor J.B. Pritzker and House Speaker Chris Welch, among others. Meanwhile, in an interesting state house race, an Illinois Republican House leader lost their primary Tuesday. Macomb Republican State Representative Noreen Hammond, the deputy minority leader in the House, came in second. According to unofficial returns, Joshua Higgins captured nearly 58% of the Republican vote in that three-way race. Hammond said in a statement that serving in the legislature has been one of the greatest honors of her life. Well, the dust settling in Illinois after the primary election, and here with the Center Square Daily, I'm your host, Greg Bishop. Let's put Illinois in focus, and let's talk now with the candidates for the Republicans who won the nomination in Tuesday's election to take on the Democrat in the race, Don Tracy. Don joins us now, and we've got a few minutes with him on a busy day for him, obviously, after getting that election victory. So, Don, thanks for taking the time with us.
Sure, glad to be here. Greg, can you turn up your volume? I can barely hear you.
All right, we'll get our producer on that end to make sure that happens, or I'll just talk a little bit louder for you.
Okay.
So, yeah, you won last night. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What's the next steps in this race?
Well, we're doing a lot of media interviews up here in Chicago. And we already have a great team. I think one of the reasons why we won is because we had a good plan, and we executed that plan, and we built a good team, good primary team of almost 15 solid volunteers, staff, and then my consultant had a number of people on. And as a result, we were able to distribute about 8,000 yard signs, and of course we got on the ballot, and we had basically operations throughout the state. And for a general election like this, we're going to have to double that. So that'll be the next step, building that up, and then of course, preparing to engage with Lieutenant Governor Stratton. Looking forward to that.
You've got like 8 months or so before the election, so there's going to be a lot of back and forth between the two of you and any possible other non-established party candidates that could get on the ballot for the 2026 election. What do you think are the big issues that taxpayers are going to be looking for from either side of this equation?
Well, one of the only things that the Lieutenant Governor and I agree on is that the cost of living, or affordability as they call it, is one of the biggest issues out there right now, and the long-term issue, which will be an issue throughout the campaign, I believe. And on that issue, I think that we are clearly in the best position, because Democrats say elect more Democrats to reduce the cost of living, but everything Democrats do increases the cost of living, starting with reckless spending, like under the Biden administration. We had historically high inflation, the highest in over 40 years, 20 to 30%, depending on who you talk to. And then they've been at war. The Democrats have been at war against a reliable, affordable, traditional energy for a number of years, and trying to transition overnight to green energy. And that has caused utility prices to go up. And of course, along the way, they've shut down, and are going to shut down some relatively clean fossil fuel plants around the country. And of course, when you reduce supply, you're going to have prices increase. And then taxes are part of cost of living, and The lieutenant governor, being part of the Pritzker administration, has to be accountable and responsible for the 49 tax increases there. And they love, new taxes and increasing old taxes. Healthcare inflation is running at 3 to 4 times overall inflation. And I think that's partly a product of the Obamacare and the problems with that. It needs to be fixed. And we need better price transparency enhancement. We need more consumer choice and more consumer involvement and more premium choices. Then we also have, Democrats, soft on crime. One of the lieutenant governor's allies was former Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx, and she, did not prosecute shoplifting, like many other, blue city prosecutors. And as a result, there is an epidemic of shoplifting, not just there, but in Springfield. You ask anybody, go to a CVS or Walgreens and ask them if people carry stuff out, and they'll say they do it all the time, and they're told not to do anything about it. And that increases the price of everything that you can carry out of a store.
So, Don, obviously affordability, crime, those are going to be some issues, but you've also got the foreign policy issues as well. When should Congress take a vote on declaring war?
When should what?
When should Congress declare war?
Well, Congress has not declared war since World War II, which was before I was born, of course. I think it was in 1942 or so when they declared war on Romania. And so that declaration of war traditionally is for, really, really true wars, not short military conflicts, not limited military action. And of course, I think we're all hoping that this will be a limited military action, a 5-week conflict.
So, Don, I know you were on limited time with us as it's just a few days after the election and you got all kinds of places you've got to be. But one last thing I want to talk to you about, at least today, because we'll connect with you in the future. And just for the record, we have put out an invitation to your opponent, Juliana Stratton, to have her on the program as well. But how do you get people out to the polls? And are you worried that not enough Republicans are going to be, encouraged or, have enough energy to get to the polls? And what do you do about those independents out there who might be undecided?
I'm very worried about turnout because the Democrats are mad as hornets now because, they're out of power in Washington and they view Washington as kind of their own personal sandbox where they can, pull money out of taxpayers through Washington for all their special pet projects. So they're super mad. They're showing up at the polls, and our Republicans are, basically apathetic and complacent, because, we have a Republican president in the White House, Republican control of Congress. And so they're going on with their lives. And Democrats traditionally anyway have always been all in on government because they and their special interest allies feed off the government. Republicans, on the other hand, we just want to be left alone by the government to do our jobs and raise our families. So, just starting out, it's hard to get Republicans and conservatives to the polls. But we have a strategy for that. And we're going to really, really focus on it because, President Trump won 2,450,000 votes in Illinois in 2024 without trying, without campaigning, without spending any money. And I think my win number is 2.1. So we're going to try to get all those voters out. But a lot of them we still won't be able to get out because a lot of them don't vote except in presidential elections. But we also another part of our strategy is to win the swing voters, independent voters, and I think my opponent will help that because some of her policies and her allies, like Mayor Brandon Johnson, like the Chicago Teachers Union, like Senator Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders, and I think that's going to turn off a lot of the middle of the road, independent swing voters, and her policy on government run health care. Her $30 trillion economic plan is going to turn off a lot of those swing voters. So that's our plan to win.
Don Tracy, the Republican nominee for Illinois U.S. Senate. Greatly appreciate you carving out the time with us today for the Center Square Daily.